All right, so let's dive into the basics of Power BI data model for Revit model. So what we see here is generally a star schema where the middle of the schema is the element table. So elements are going to be everything inside of Revit, both physical and conceptual. So pretty much everything, if it exists inside of Revit, whether it's a level or a material or a beam or a door, is going to be in the element table. So it's very important to understand that. Then let's look around here. We have the name of the family, the family's parameter, the family type name, the family type parameters, the family instance parameters. Here what we're looking at is elements that are embedded in families. So these are going to be things like mullions and curtain walls, families within families, elements in groups. It's kind of like the children of the families. Most things that are in the embedded elements are generally also in the element table. The element hierarchy table controls all of those, right? So when you select a curtain wall, it's also going to select the 100 panels and mullions in that curtain wall instead of just selecting a kind of empty parent container. Let's look at the tables on this row. So here we have the element geometry table. That's going to have the number of triangles, the areas of the surfaces of the family. It's also going to have the bounding box, and this is going to become very useful when it comes to the top Z and the minimum Z, which tells us where that component is in terms of elevation. So this is what allows us to determine if an element is on the first floor, or if it says it's on the first floor, but geometrically speaking, it's on the 10th floor. The materials and element table is going to list all of the materials in every single element. And it's also going to tell you how much area and volume of those elements. So it's an extremely powerful table. The element in system will show you the system and every element that is in there. The element in warnings will show you all of the elements that are related, that have a warning. So obviously very useful if you want to audit the warnings. The compound structures is really about those layered materials. So, the kind of sandwich material, if you will. So those are going to be things like your floors, walls, ceilings, and roofs. And in here, you're going to get the thickness, the order, and any kind of properties related to those compound materials, those sandwich layers, if you will. So it's going to tell you how much mayo you got on your sandwich and how thick your beef patty is. The material node is actually just going to give you more detailed information about any material that could come up in the element list. So we can kind of see it here, like the material transparency, smoothness. Frankly, you're not going to be using this table often unless you're absolutely obsessed with materials. All right, the group is going to have all of the groups and every element that they contain inside of them. So if you want to analyze what group names, where those groups are, and what elements they contain, this is where you're going to get that information. The phases is a very small table. You're probably not going to use it that much. It's just going to list every single phase. And we do have some bit of extra information in there to do some auditing. All right, this is a pretty big table, the BIM document. So when we talk about a BIM document, it's basically a VIM file. And a VIM file can be a Revit model, a Navisworks model, an IFC model, and so forth. So the BIM document is going to have the name of that file, is going to have some metadata from Revit, for example, like you can enter the information for the address, the author, the building name. It's going to have the version of Revit that you use. So if you're merging VIM files, you can check if they're all using the same versions and so forth. Keep in mind, with Enterprise, it's very easy to merge VIM files. So you can merge a Revit and an IFC and a Navisworks, or you can merge 10 unrelated Revit projects and so forth. So when you're starting to merge things like that, you're going to want to look at the VIM document and the BIM document that were used for that merge. The VIM document is when we are merging multiple VIMs together. So that's a function of VIM Enterprise. So when you start merging VIMs, you'll want to use the VIM table to differentiate where the data came from. And the units table is going to list every unit that is used in a particular BIM document, as well as some information about which labels and which unit types they're using, whether it's metric, imperial, and so forth, based on the settings. All right, the category table is very important. Very often we want to remove certain categories like annotation categories. Perhaps we want to only look at stairs. Perhaps we want to hide the doors. So the category table is extremely important in this case. The list of views is going to be in the element views list. The face filters are in the element face filter list, so that's pretty obvious. And we already have some great reports that do the audit of the face filters, so you don't have to think about it too much. Just know that it's there. Here we start to see the differentiation between element and instance. So the way that the logic works is there are rooms in the element table, and those rooms, they contain extra data that has been extracted in the element room. However, there's a bunch of things that are in rooms. So when there's things that are in rooms, it goes into the instance table. So for example, if you have furniture that's in a room and you have 10 pieces of furniture in that room, you're going to be looking at the instance room table. If you are picking at rooms and you want to get more data from those rooms, you're going to be looking at the element room table. Now, the same concept follows for the instance level table. When we are looking at instance level, we are going to look at everything that is on that level. So if I go in here and I pick level 1 and I use it to filter my element table, it's going to only show me things that are on level 1 in the element table. And once again, the same thing applies to the workset. So when I use the instance workset table, it's going to filter the element table to only show me things that are on that workset from the element list. Finally, we have the instance level references. This is a very special table that merges a lot of different level references into a single one. So it looks terrifying like this. But thankfully, when we actually look at it, everything is in a folder. So the main thing you need to care about if you ever look at this is the reference primary, although all of the other details will be present in the table. Okay, so at this point, the learning path will probably split into two. One way you can keep going is if you're already familiar with Power BI and you're ready to dive into it, I'm going to make a video on all of these tables that we just looked at with some examples of how they work and perhaps some existing reports that already use them so you can get a sense of how to modify this data. The other way we're going to go is just exercises, how to create tables from this without looking at every single table at the same time. We're just going to do some exercises, create some dashboards, create some slicers, create some graphics from the data that we have here. So there's probably going to be two different paths in the playlist, and I'll let you choose which one you want to go to in the future. With that being said, I'll talk to you soon. Cheers.